coming along and talking to us today. Can you tell us who you are, first of all?
I'm Margaret Shields, and I was born in England. I came to New Zealand 50 years ago, and this is my country now.
And can you tell us about your World War I person? Who was he?
He
What
was
his name?
my uncle, Uncle John, and he spent a lot of time with me as a child. I actually lived with him and his wife. My mother and father had both gone back to work. They'd had a business and had fallen through. So I got to know him very well, and he was always a happy person.
So his name was John Watson, is that
Yes.
right? John Watson. So how did you find out about his war service?
Well, childlike, as I got older, I wanted to know why he was all crippled up and, you know, what had happened. He just smiled and said, "Oh, that was the war." And I couldn't get anything else out of him at the time. His wife, Auntie Bella, later on said he doesn't like talking about it, Margaret. It was such a terrible time.
No, you told me that he'd been in the trenches in France. Yes.
That's right. And again, I don't really know how he felt about it. It never came over. He just mentioned that he'd developed rheumatic fever because he said they were always wet and covered in mud, and then that developed to this rheumatoid arthritis that crippled him.
So he was invalided out of the army. Do you know when did he?
I don't know, and I don't know any real dates. I would say he was 18 years old when he went in. Whether it was the first year or if he had 2 years, I don't know. They won't talk about all these things, but I expect to be told that several times.
Yes, it's unusual if they do talk
Yes,
about
yes.
it. The other thing you mentioned to me was that he didn't get a war pension. Can you tell me
That's
about
right.
that?
Well, I only know about that because my mother kept saying to Grandad, who lived with Uncle John and Auntie Bella, "You should get out of it, Dad. You shouldn't be there." And he said, "Well, what would they live on?" And I asked my mother, I said, "Why haven't they got anything to live on?" "Oh," she said, "it's just to do with the war." And I couldn't get anything more, but I did ask my granddad. And he said he was invalided out with this rheumatoid arthritis, and because it wasn't a war wound, there was no pension for him.
And yet, if he hadn't been in those wet
He wouldn't.
conditions all the time, he probably wouldn't
all
have
right.
developed that illness. So, did you have any photographs of him, Margaret, or not?
Oh, I have, but I didn't think to bring it.
Ah.
Just one sitting on a chair at the front of the house.
But you've got a tablecloth there,
Yes,
is that
well,
right?
this is very special to me. But when my husband and I got engaged, 1952, my husband bought a rug to do, the wool rugs,
Yes.
and I got the embroidery to do a tablecloth. And I got all the big stuff done, but I never got these little ones done. And Uncle John had tried knitting. He darned his socks, or tried to, but this rheumatoid arthritis is very bad gripping things. And I said to him, "Well, how about brightening your life up with my colours?" I said, "I'd love you to do these little flowers on this tablecloth." And he did them all for me. So it's quite special.
So it's actual work that he
Yes,
did with his
these
hands.
little, yes.
Would you like to hold it up to the camera so that they can shot? Oh, that's It's lovely. It's a very pretty tablecloth.
Yes. It's Irish linen.
Yes. And so you did all the big
The big stuff.
flowers.
Yes. And, you know, I'd got bored with it actually. And Uncle John was looking for something interesting to do. He was sick of playing patience, in which that was getting difficult, picking the cards up. And I said, how do you think you could do my little flowers for me? And he did them.
So it was probably quite important for him to have something to
Yes.
keep his fingers as flexible as possible.
Yes, yes. But that was a difficult one.
Margaret, is there anything more you'd like to say about him and about how you remember him?
Well, he was a very happy person, and he was, because he couldn't do anything, he listened to the radio a lot. No television
No.
they had in those days. And so he knew about the world events and things that were going on. He was interested, always very interested, and so was my grandfather. And they used to have many arguments about various things, like politicians or what was happening in some other part of the world. And I would listen, and he was very good at explaining things to me. It went in one ear and out the other, because I think I would have been about 14, so it wasn't really of interest to me, but listening to him talk was. And he always finished with a laugh, always laughing. Unless he had very bad days, and then I didn't see him, he'd be in his bed.
He'd just withdraw.
Yeah.
Yes. So he kept the painful bits to himself.
Oh yes, very much so.
So there was always that consciousness of the war. It was always about something about the war.
Yeah. And what might happen around the world. I suppose that was just before the Korean War, Korean War. That was the first one that
the
happened.
early 50s, yes.
Yes.
So what did he think about the wars, the subsequent wars that happened? Did he have any strong opinions?
Yes, he felt that all the bad generals had to have been booted out, and they would surely have some more intelligent officers in charge. That was his main thought.
Goodness, yes.
And when you watch these films, you do wonder about them.
Well, he'd been on the receiving end, I suppose.
Yes, very much so. And the politicians, their guidelines for helping them when they got back home, they didn't seem to be any very good ones.
So
They just felt that surely there could have been something that have given him to help.
because they talked about a land fit for heroes to live in,
Yes.
didn't they? But
Yes.
the reality was rather different.
Very different.
Yes.
Yes.
So what town were you in?
South Shields.
South Shields, yes, in the north of England. Yes. And New Zealand's your home now. We're interested in the fact that people live here, but their stories from the war span the globe, really.
Yes,
It's not
yes.
not
There's
just for New Zealand.
There's always a connection somewhere.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much for coming and talking to us.
Thank you for
Margaret.
listening.
Oh, it's
I
wonderful to listen. Thank you very much.
feel like I've done something for him, bless his heart.
Yes. Well,